Hey there, and welcome back to the deep dive.
Good to be here.
We've got quite a stack of sources today, reports from UNICEF, other humanitarian agencies.
Yes, some really detailed accounts.
And our mission, as always, is to dive right in for you, pull out the key insights, and basically help you get up to speed quickly on, well, a really tough subject.
Absolutely.
Today, we're unpacking what these sources actually mean when they describe the situation for children in Gaza as a war on child.
It's powerful phrasing.
It really is. So what do the reports say this means? What are the immediate threats they're flagging? What's driving it? And what paths forward do they suggest, if any? Let's get into it.
Okay, so that phrase, war on children, what's striking in these sources is that they ground it very much in, well, in data. It's not just rhetoric.
Right.
They explain it means children aren't just, unfortunate casualties. They're direct victims.
How so?
Well, the sources point to places meant to be safe. Think hospitals, schools being used as shelters, even food distribution points reportedly being attacked or destroyed.
Places children gather.
Exactly. And the sources compiled data showing just staggering numbers of children killed, injured, displaced again and again, and experiencing this profound ongoing trauma.
Wow. That context from the sources definitely lands the weight of that phrase. So based on these reports, what are the most critical, immediate threats children are facing right now? This is June 2025.
The sources are really specific here. They kind of zero in on three main threats.
Okay.
First, severe malnutrition. They cite some alarming data like at least 90% of children under 5 experiencing acute food insecurity.
90%.
Yeah, leading to actual starvation and severe wasting, according to the reports. Second is the psychological trauma, just overwhelming.
Constantly living through it.
Constant bombardments, witnessing loss, being displaced repeatedly. The mental health impact, they say, is devastating.
And the third.
And third, a near complete lack of access to essential services. We're talking clean water, medical care, almost zero access in some areas, the reports state.
It's hard to even imagine.
They include some incredibly stark examples. One that stands out is a 3-year-old child seen at the border weighing less than 6 kilograms.
Oh, that's just heartbreaking. It really puts a face to the numbers the sources are showing us.
It does.
So when these reports look at why this is happening, they seem to point heavily to both the blockade and military actions, right?
Exactly. The sources repeatedly identify the blockade as, well, a primary driver.
Okay.
They say it prevents essentials, food, medicine, clean water from getting into Gaza at the massive scale that's needed.
So aid can't get in properly.
Right. And they note that even the aid convoys that do make it are often insufficient. And some agencies report they're sometimes even targeted.
Targeted, wow.
The sources use really strong phrasing here, describing it as a kind of systemic strangulation.
Systemic strangulation, that's powerful.
And then there are the military actions, like airstrikes, also cited for destroying vital civilian infrastructure, water treatment plants, bakeries, hospitals, things families need to survive.
Which just compounds the crisis. And the sources also talk about aid getting sort of tangled up in politics.
Yeah, this is an important point they raise. They report that aid has, unfortunately, become highly politicized.
How does that play out?
Humanitarian agencies, UN bodies mentioned in these reports, they say they face significant blockages, restrictions from both Israeli and regional authorities.
So multiple points of obstruction.
Apparently.
Yeah.
And the sources suggest many governments elsewhere are seen as being neutral or maybe even complicit, which hinders getting life-saving supplies in. They even mention things like baby formula being held up.
Just basic necessities. What about children with specific vulnerabilities, like special needs? Do the sources mention them?
They do, yeah. Briefly, but it's important.
Yeah.
They point out that children with special needs or chronic illnesses are particularly vulnerable.
Makes sense.
Many of the specialized care places they relied on, especially up north, have been destroyed or just aren't working. So they have nowhere to get that specific care.
Just another layer of difficulty. And looking beyond the immediate, the sources paint, well, a pretty grim picture for the long term, don't they? What does recovery look like, according to them?
If we connect the dots in the sources, they predict recovery will take decades. Not years, decades.
Decades.
They anticipate long-term damage, physical, cognitive, emotional, across a whole generation. They stress the immense effort needed, not just rebuilding homes and schools, but rebuilding trust, hope, and massively scaling up mental health care.
It's about rebuilding the very foundation, it sounds like.
That's the sense you get from the reports, yes. A foundation that's been fundamentally damaged.
So for someone listening right now feeling maybe a bit overwhelmed by all this,
Hmm.
what do the sources suggest you can actually do from afar?
Well, the sources do offer some concrete steps. First, they say stay informed. Use reliable sources, like
Hmm.
the agencies putting out these reports.
Okay.
They urge people to demand action from their own governments, push for unimpeded humanitarian access. Supporting NGOs on the ground is also key. They mention groups like Médecins Sans Frontières, Doctors Without Borders, Save the Children, UNICEF as examples of those trying to deliver aid directly.
Right.
The sources also suggest amplifying the voices of Palestinian children and families, making sure their stories are heard, and, maybe most fundamentally, just maintaining empathy, not looking away. What really stands out across all these sources, the core message maybe, is just the need to remember. Behind every single statistic, every report of destruction, there's a real child, a real family. The scale of what they describe demands regency.
It truly does. And as you sit with everything the sources have laid out today, the stark data, the immense immediate needs, this prediction of decades for recovery, perhaps the thought to really consider is the profound cost. The cost this crisis is exacting on an entire generation. What does that long-term damage really mean? Not just for Gaza, but, well, for all of us and the future we share. Thank you for joining us for this deep dive into these really vital sources. We hope this conversation helped you feel a bit more informed about a truly critical situation. Until next time.